China's complex energy dilemma. China is grappling with a highly complex energy challenge. Its rapidly growing economy has driven a surge in living standards and electricity demand, particularly for air conditioning. The situation is exacerbated by climate change, which has caused rising temperatures across the country. With a geographical and climatic profile similar to the United States, both nations span vast areas and diverse climates. China mirrors the US in its cooling needs. Just as the southern states like Florida, Texas, and Arizona have witnessed widespread air conditioner usage, China is experiencing a similar boom. Currently, for every 2 air conditioners produced globally, 1 is sold in China. Rising personal incomes have fueled this trend, leading to peak summer days when nearly half of China's electricity consumption is used solely for cooling. However, air conditioning is just one piece of the broader energy demand puzzle in a country growing wealthier. While annual electricity consumption in Europe and the United States has stabilized, China's figures continue to climb at an unprecedented pace. No nation in history has matched China's combination of population size and rapid economic development, resulting in unparalleled energy demand growth. This creates significant challenges for China, which is no stranger to localized power shortages. However, the widespread energy shortages of September and October 2021 marked a new level of severity. To address surging cooling demand, grid managers initially cut non-essential urban lighting and other municipal power supplies. Later, they were forced to limit industrial activity, impacting major suppliers to global corporations like Tesla and Apple. These measures, though seen as necessary at the time, slowed China's post-pandemic economic recovery. The situation worsened with prolonged droughts in central China and a sudden drop in wind energy output in the north. Coal reserves plummeted to alarmingly low levels, and localized outages escalated into widespread rolling blackouts. Cities plunged into darkness for hours. In Liaoyang, traffic ground to a halt as signals failed. Factory workers were hospitalized due to ventilation system breakdowns, and residents relied on candles in stores. Municipal authorities urged citizens to stockpile clean water, and building managers advised using staircases to avoid elevator entrapments, a grim reality some residents likened to life in North Korea. The central role of coal in China's energy landscape. To understand the root causes of this energy crisis, one must examine China's power grid and its core dependency on coal. Coal accounts for a staggering 62% of China's electricity production, compared to just 18% in Europe and 21% in the US. Nearly half of the world's coal-fired power capacity is concentrated in China, a legacy of its energy strategy from decades past. While Europe and the US have transitioned significantly to cleaner, more flexible natural gas plants, China faces hurdles in following suit. China's domestic oil and gas supplies are limited, requiring the nation to import nearly half of its natural gas, making it expensive and less viable for large-scale power generation. In contrast, China boasts abundant coal reserves with vast mines in Inner Mongolia, Shaanxi, and Shaanxi. These reserves are second only to those in Russia, Australia, and the US. Although renewable energy sources, particularly solar, are increasingly cost competitive with coal, China's rapid economic growth complicates the timing of investments. While solar power has lower lifetime costs, it requires significant upfront investment for production and installation. Coal-fired plants, on the other hand, spread costs more evenly over their operational lifespans, making them a more financially appealing option in the short term. Economic considerations and structural challenges. China's state-owned power companies operate within a unique framework. While overseen by the central government, these companies have operational autonomy akin to private enterprises. Electricity prices are government-regulated, typically set at around $0.09 per kilowatt-hour for businesses and $0.08 per kilowatt-hour for households, significantly lower than the global average. This policy enhances China's industrial competitiveness, much like its low labor costs. However, it presents a critical dilemma: fixed electricity prices versus fluctuating coal costs. Renewable energy's geographic and policy hurdles. At first glance, solar and wind energy appear to be ideal solutions for China's energy demands given their competitive costs compared to coal. Yet, geographic and policy challenges make the reality more complicated. While China possesses vast renewable energy potential, most solar and wind resources are located in its arid western regions and along the northern border, thousands of kilometers from its densely populated southeast. This geographic mismatch also affects hydropower, with the largest dams situated in the south and southwest, far from the industrial heartlands. To address these disparities, China has heavily invested in energy infrastructure, notably ultra-high voltage UHV transmission lines. Of the world's 36 UHV lines, 34 are in China, enabling power to traverse immense distances. China's superior power transmission system, a missed opportunity. Globally, China boasts a cutting-edge power transmission system capable of delivering electricity across vast distances with remarkable efficiency, operating at voltages between 800 and 1,100 kilovolts. These ultra-high voltage UHV lines can transmit up to 5 times the capacity of standard transmission lines, ranging from 110 to 500 kilovolts. This advanced network connects resource-rich renewable energy regions like Xinjiang's deserts in the west to industrial hubs such as Anhui province in the east, spanning distances of up to 3,200 kilometers. However, despite massive investments, the utilization of these UHV lines remains suboptimal. A 2020 report revealed that these lines were operating at only about 60% capacity. This suggests the issue lies not in supply capabilities, but in policies and pricing mechanisms. In essence, China has built a state-of-the-art energy supply system without fostering corresponding demand. The core problem stems from a lack of incentives for provinces to purchase electricity from other regions. With electricity prices regulated by the government, provinces often prioritize local power sources to retain economic benefits within their borders. For instance, densely populated and industrialized eastern provinces prefer nearby coal-fired plants over renewable energy from distant western provinces, even though transmission challenges have been resolved. As a result, despite heavy infrastructure investment, the vast potential of renewable energy remains underutilized. The 2021 energy crisis, a wake-up call. In 2021, China's energy grid faced unprecedented challenges, exposing its fragility despite theoretical flexibility and nationwide connectivity. Although renewable energy sources had been deployed, they primarily served as backups during peak demand periods. In reality, the system remained fragmented and heavily reliant on coal, a setup that had previously supported the country's rapid growth but faltered under mounting pressures. midway through 2020, China banned coal imports from Australia in response to calls for an investigation into COVID-19's origins. At the time, Australia supplied nearly half of China's imported coal. Confident in its ability to weather the ban, China faced no immediate challenges, even during winter. However, the events of 2021 introduced unforeseen difficulties. Post-pandemic recovery spurred a construction and heavy industry boom, driving coal demand up by 10 to 11% compared to 2020 and 8% over 2019 levels in the first half of the year. Unfortunately, this demand surge coincided with a domestic coal production decline. In Inner Mongolia, over 30 coal mines were shut down due to land use violations disrupting production for months. In Shaanxi, safety inspections following a fatal accident led to temporary mine closures. Compounding the issue, global coal supplies faced disruptions. Indonesia, China's primary coal supplier after the Australian ban, experienced severe storms that curtailed exports. Domestically, extreme weather worsened the crisis. Record-breaking floods in Henan diverted coal supplies for disaster relief, while a subsequent drought significantly reduced hydropower output. And meanwhile, global coal prices soared to over $200 per ton, 4 times the previous year's rate. The combination of reduced domestic production, disrupted international supplies, extreme weather, and soaring prices culminated in a perfect energy storm. Power plants across China depleted their reserves, forcing them to operate at higher costs than allowed by fixed electricity prices. Some plants even shut down for maintenance to minimize financial losses. As a result, 20 provinces experienced severe rolling blackouts, the worst in decades. The global supply chain was also disrupted as manufacturers scaled back or halted production, further intensifying the crisis. Caught between growth and climate goals. The 2021 energy crisis exposed the vulnerabilities of China's economy and its overdependence on coal. The country now faces a critical dilemma, balancing the need for high economic growth with the urgent challenge of combating climate change. China is acutely aware of the necessity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, a realization rooted in both scientific evidence and first-hand experience. Less than a decade ago, Beijing suffered some of the world's worst air pollution, far exceeding tolerable levels. Researchers estimated that air pollution was linked to 1,000 to 3,000 daily deaths in China. The smog was so severe that international employers offered hazard pay for employees relocating to the country. The primary driver of this crisis was the widespread use of coal for power generation and household heating. In recent years, China has made significant progress in improving air quality, yet pollution levels remain far above WHO standards, causing substantial annual mortality. This air quality crisis provided Beijing with a stark reminder of the tangible costs of coal dependency. Globally, the stakes are even higher. Addressing climate change is critical to preventing catastrophic outcomes such as unlivable heat, rising sea levels, and deadly superstorms. As the world's largest carbon dioxide emitter, producing double the emissions of the United States, China is under intense scrutiny. Despite its lower per capita emissions, its upward trend in total emissions places immense pressure on the nation to act. Ambitious climate commitments. At the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP26 in Glasgow, China pledged to peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. This ambitious timeline is noteworthy when compared to other nations. For instance, Japan aims to reach carbon neutrality 37 years after its emissions peak, the US in 43 years and the EU in 71 years. China, however, plans to achieve this feat within just 30 years, despite its emissions peak being projected at significantly higher levels than any other nation. The question remains, can China deliver on its commitments? The world is watching closely as the country navigates the dual challenges of maintaining economic growth and addressing its outsized role in global emissions. Here's a rewritten and polished version of the content in English. China's climate commitments and the path forward. China has committed to reducing carbon emission intensity measured as CO2 emissions per unit of GDP by 45% from 2005 levels by 2020. According to the United Nations, this goal was achieved 3 years ahead of schedule in 2017. At the 2015 Paris COP21 summit, China further pledged to reduce carbon intensity by 65% by 2030, a target it is currently on track to meet. Based on past commitments, China may even reach its carbon emissions peak by 2030. However, when the initial carbon intensity targets were set, critics pointed out that China was already on course to meet the 45% reduction by 2020. Data from the International Energy Agency reveals that the pace of emissions reduction slowed in the 5 years following the 2009 commitment compared to the preceding 5 years. It is important to differentiate between reducing carbon intensity, which typically occurs as a nation shifts from an industrial to a service-based economy, and achieving carbon emissions peak, where emissions reach their highest point and then begin to decline. While China aims to peak carbon emissions by 2030, its current trajectory suggests challenges in meeting this goal. With the deadline approaching, it seems increasingly difficult for China to stay on target. Despite making strong climate commitments in the past, recent power crises in 2021 and 2022 have highlighted the country's top priority: energy security. This focus has led to approvals for new coal power plants and increased coal production, actions that starkly contradict earlier pledges to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. China's shifting stance is evident in public statements by officials. Analysts have observed a growing emphasis on energy security as a key priority in the transition to renewables. At the 2021 Central Economic Work Conference, policymakers acknowledged that achieving emissions targets might be delayed in favor of economic growth. Over the past decade, China's GDP growth has slowed, placing significant pressure on leadership to maintain stability. However, this economic growth remains tightly linked to carbon emissions. Although the dilemma, economy versus climate, reducing carbon emissions is essential not only for public health and international pressure, but also in response to the undeniable reality of climate change. Yet China faces a delicate balancing act. Advancing economic growth often conflicts with cutting emissions, while prioritizing emissions reductions could hamper economic expansion. This duality underscores the challenge of reconciling short-term gains with long-term sustainability. Renewable energy, while crucial, has yet to fully replace carbon-based energy sources. For decades, China's rapid economic growth has been fueled by cheap, carbon-intensive energy. This trade-off between economy and environment, between societal order and public health, and between short-term benefits and long-term goals remains at the heart of China's energy policy. Innovations in nuclear energy and AI. To address these challenges, China has turned to nuclear energy and artificial intelligence, AI, as strategic solutions. Nuclear power, in particular, plays a critical role in reducing coal dependency and achieving climate targets. With its pledge to reach carbon neutrality by 2060, China is accelerating the development of nuclear technology and infrastructure. As of 2023, China has more than 50 operational nuclear reactors, supplying about 5% of the country's electricity. Additionally, over 20 reactors are under construction, nearly half of all reactors being built globally. These reactors incorporate advanced technologies such as the domestically developed Hualong One, HP 1000, a third-generation nuclear reactor featuring superior efficiency and safety. Each reactor in this expansion phase boasts a capacity of 1.2 million kilowatts. China is also leading research and experimentation with molten salt reactors, a technology that promises enhanced efficiency and reduced nuclear waste. Meanwhile, AI is being integrated into China's energy management systems to optimize operations and minimize waste. AI's role in energy optimization. AI is revolutionizing multiple facets of China's energy landscape. One, data analysis. AI analyzes vast data streams from grid sensors, predicting demand and detecting issues before they occur. Two, load balancing. AI dynamically balances electricity supply and demand, especially critical during peak periods or when renewable energy sources fluctuate. Three, renewable integration. AI predicts solar and wind energy output with precision, facilitating seamless coordination between renewable and traditional energy sources. Four, energy storage. AI optimizes battery usage, reducing costs and extending equipment lifespan. A sustainable future. Insight advancements in nuclear energy and AI herald a new era for China's energy system. While nuclear power could emerge as a cornerstone of China's energy mix, AI ensures the grid operates with unmatched efficiency and stability. Together, these technologies position China to lead the world in sustainable energy solutions. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to check out our new videos to support the channel. See you in the next one.